Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. We always go deep, and today is no exception, but we are switching gears just a bit. We're going to be taking a look at a question that was posed on the Ask Men Advice subreddit.
Oh,
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's from a woman who's trying to figure out how to tell her husband she wants to have, like, rougher sex.
that is an interesting question to be asking on the internet.
Yeah, for sure, but that's why we're here to, like, dive into it. But before we go any further, I do want to say we're not relationship therapists or anything like that, so no advice from us.
Yeah, we're just here to analyze and.
Exactly. We're going to unpack all the different responses she got and just see what they tell us about relationships, long-term relationships and how people communicate and desire, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how people approach this topic and kind of what assumptions they bring to the table.
Right. And the original post does give us a little background. It's a long-term relationship. They have 3 kids, busy
Sounds
lives.
familiar.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it seems like, things were a little more intense earlier in their relationship. Now she's looking to spice things up. So
You're right.
let's see what kind of advice people had. Some people were just like straight to the point, just tell them. Other people were more focused on setting boundaries and safe words.
Yeah. You know what really struck me was how much emphasis there was on consent across the board. Like, no matter what the specific advice was, people kept coming back to that idea, making sure that both partners are on the same page and feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of the comments stressing that were from men, which I think is really cool to see.
Yeah, it shows a real shift in how we're thinking about these things, which is encouraging.
For sure. Of course, not all the advice was, so serious. There were some pretty funny ones and some that were just out there.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, like one person actually suggested she should just scream, "Fuck me," at her husband.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was a wild one.
That's blunt.
Yeah. But it does make you think, is that direct approach always the best? Or is there something to be said for a little more subtlety? I think it depends a lot on the couple and how they communicate. What works for one couple might totally backfire for another.
Right. It's all about figuring out what feels safe and comfortable for both people.
Exactly. And speaking of comfort, some people brought up, the reasons why their sex life might have changed in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Kids' stress getting older, all those things can have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not always just about techniques or fantasies. It's about understanding the whole picture of the relationship and how life changes can affect intimacy.
Yeah. And a few people even suggested couples counseling.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a little outside help to work through those kinds of things.
For sure. Sometimes it's hard to have those conversations on your own, especially when they're about such sensitive topics. It's interesting, though, because the original poster, she actually gave a little more context in the comments.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she mentioned that, like, they have this dominating, controlling vibe going on.
Okay.
So, I mean, that could mean a lot of things. Obviously, we don't know the specifics, but it would be interesting to know how that plays out. You
Yeah,
know?
for sure. And has also mentioned that her husband's put her in her place before and, like, he isn't afraid to be rough during sex,
Huh.
but it sounds like the frequency and intensity is, like, decreased. And now she's
Oh,
wanting more of that.
I see. So it's not just about the roughness, it's about the, like, level of it or something.
Yeah, like, they have sex a lot, but it's just not quite hitting the mark for him anymore. It's like she's craving more of that, she actually said.
It makes you wonder how much our past experiences shape what we want in a relationship.
Yeah, totally. Especially in a long-term one.
Exactly. Like maybe she's longing for that intensity they had in the beginning, but her husband is just in a different headspace now, especially with kids and a business and everything.
That makes sense. And speaking of all that, it does sound like things shifted for them around the time they bought a house and started their business and had their 3rd kid.
Yeah, that's a lot of change all at once.
It really is.
And I mean, zooming out for a second, it's actually pretty common for couples to experience a dip in their sex life after big life transitions.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when kids come into the picture. All the demands of parenting, plus maybe financial stress, not enough sleep.
Oh, yeah. All that can take a toll on a relationship, for sure.
Definitely. And actually, there's research showing that relationship satisfaction often goes down after having a baby.
Huh.
Yeah, it can take time for couples to adjust and figure out their new normal.
Makes sense. And one commenter actually said something about how maybe her husband is struggling with seeing her as like the mother of his children versus the object of his desire or something like that.
Yeah, well, it was phrased a little more bluntly, but I think there's some truth to that.
Right?
Hmm.
Like it can be hard for people to reconcile those different roles, especially when you're talking about rough sex or dominance and all that.
It's complicated for sure. And it kind of brings up this whole thing about societal expectations and how they affect our ideas about sex and parenthood.
Mm.
Like we associate motherhood with certain things, nurturing gentleness, but rough sex can be seen as kind of taboo.
Yeah,
So that can create conflict for people internally and make it harder to communicate openly.
definitely. And there were also some people saying she should be more direct with her communication, like even showing him porn that's similar to what she's looking for.
Okay. I mean, on the one hand, directness is definitely important,
Yeah,
but I also think you have to be sensitive about how you approach these
for
conversations.
sure.
Like some people would be really uncomfortable if their partner suddenly wanted to try something totally new, especially if it involves a level of intensity they're not used to.
Yeah, I can see that.
So creating a safe space for that dialogue is super important. It's not just about getting what you want in the bedroom. It's about making sure everyone feels heard and respected and safe
Yeah,
and enthusiastically consenting to every step of the way.
yeah. And that kind of brings us back to consent, which has been this underlying theme throughout this whole discussion.
Exactly. And it's not just about saying yes or no at the start. It's about ongoing communication and checking in with each other, making sure you're both on the same page.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Wow, it's amazing how much we've unpacked just from this one Reddit post.
Right. It really shows you how universal these issues are. I mean, everyone's thinking about this stuff. Everyone's dealing with it in their own relationships.
Totally. And for me, it's really highlighted like how much power dynamics and societal norms play into intimacy. Like we have all these ideas about what's okay and what's not. And that can really get in the way of open communication.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to question those assumptions and be aware of our own biases. That's how we can approach intimacy with more openness and compassion.
And so what are some takeaways here? What can our listeners really learn from this whole deep dive into Reddit relationship advice?
Well, I think the biggest thing is communication. Communication. It's not just about telling your partner what you want. It's about really listening to them too and understanding where they're coming from and being willing to compromise.
Yeah, and remembering that communication isn't just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process.
Exactly. You got to keep checking in with each other, be open to feedback, and adapt as your needs and desires change.
And of course, we can't forget about consent.
Right, that's the foundation of any healthy sexual relationship. And it's not just a yes or no at the beginning, it's about continuing communication throughout the whole experience.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to feel safe and comfortable and empowered to speak up.
And, sometimes getting some outside help can be really valuable. If you're struggling to have these conversations or you're facing challenges in your relationship, couples counseling can be a game changer.
It can give you that neutral space to work through things and learn to communicate better.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, I think this deep dive has given everyone a lot to think about. And remember, this is just scratching the surface. There's so much more to explore when it comes to these topics.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear what you guys think.
So if you're enjoying these deep dives, make sure you subscribe to Voices of the Soul wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like.
We're always looking for new and interesting things to dive into, so feel free to leave us a comment with your suggestions or any questions you have. You can find us on YouTube by searching for Shauna Polage. That's SHAWNAPOLAGE.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through Reddit relationship advice. Until next time, keep those conversations going and keep those sparks flying.